1 minute, I was safe in the cosy confines of TV's GamesMaster. The next, I was face to face with the boy from Manchester's mean streets, European computer games champion, Danny Curley. Before it self-destructed, in the manner that tape messages often do in these situations, it set to head for the darkest corner of London's docklands. The mission? To shoot a film which could change the face of a whole generation. To mastermind Power Play.
Power Play will demonstrate a whole range of video games playing skills. Now note I use the word skills, not cheats. Cheats are sad, they're tragic. In fact, if you need to use cheats, you're probably the type of person whose lips move when they read. You will find no cheats on this video. What you will find is real, genuine skill which will teach you. To do this, Danny Curley will pass on the benefits of his years of legendary games playing prowess. We'll sit together in a cosy, chummy conversation type situation, and we'll start with the basics. Proper joystick technique, real button bashing, screen positioning, and weapons technique. We'll take those basic skills and apply them to every single type of game you could possibly imagine. Platform games, beat 'em up, sports, no stone will be left unturned. We reckon by the end of the video you have an exceptional chance of being pretty above average. So much so that we'll test your newfound skill with a special Danny Curley Games Challenge at the end of the video. So if I was you, I wouldn't let my attention wander for a second. Right, Danny, we're going to start off with sports games. Now what we've done is, together we've chosen what we think are probably the best sports games of all time, but also ones which show a wide range of skills that you can basically use in any sports game. We're going to start off with Speedball 2. Now this has got a management section, Danny. How do you cope with that?
In the management section you can actually go into the gym where you can beef up the attributes of all your separate players individually. I've actually noticed that I seem to use my goalie and my centre forward more than any other players on the pitch. Right. I also noticed that a lot of other people seem to use them too most. That's merely because all the goal scoring is done between them two certain players. Right. So it's very important to beef them up to their maximum potential.
Do you think that's a general rule if you've got any type of sports game where you get the chance to build up players in a team? Is it better to go for the individual who use the most rather than spread it out?
Yeah, it's important to be able to identify which certain players you use the most. It's like in, say, American football games. If you use your left receiver the most, if you can actually beef him up, beef him up. Or if there's a transfer market in the game, buy the best player you can get. There's no point in wasting money on players you hardly ever use.
What if you have a little bit more left over, who would you put it on?
Centre midfield. Right. He seems to do quite a bit of passing and receiving, so I'd go for him.
So you're keeping that channel up the middle of the pitch. I think it's a Wimbledon type of game.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, Danny, so I'm in the blue going up the pitch, you're in the red going down. So what I want to see from you, Danny, is some good goals. Go on, hit me with your best shot.
Here's a good one. You stand about there.
Yeah.
And throw it very high.
So it's right in the middle.
Then go in, smash the goalie, and knock it in the back of the net like that.
Okay, as we see from the replay there, Danny throws it in high, so my goalie's committed to jumping on the way back down. He bashes him and right in the back of the net. Well, it's funny, Danny, because I use a slightly different version of that. It's not quite so subtle. I just basically tank it up the middle, right up to the goalie and just keep battering him. But the problem is, because you've powered up your goalkeeper so much, it doesn't quite work against him because he's rock hard. But 9 times out of 10, that will work as well. Okay, Danny, we've covered the goals. Now, is there any other tips, any other general tips on Speedball 2?
These coins at the side. Yeah. Always go up your way to get hold of them. Be very important, because with the money, you can beef up your players better. So if you've got a stronger team, that'll give you a big advantage over your opposition.
Right, and you can power up those essential players like the goalie, like the centre forward again.
And there's also these corkscrew things at the side of the pitch called score multipliers. At the present, you get 10 points for a goal. If you throw it round once, you can see a little orange light there. It indicates that I'll now get 15 points for a goal.
Right.
It multiplies it by 50%. If I throw it around again, I'll now get 20 points for a goal.
So it's worth going out of your way to try and get
Yeah,
them?
I'd actually advise you, that should be your first priority at the start of a game.
Yeah.
Also, if your mate does that, the very first thing you should do is counteract that. If you throw it back round, then it'll knock it off so his scores won't be multiplied.
But the fact is, this is all irrelevant anyway, Danny, because there's no way you're getting near my goal again.
We'll have to see about that, Dominic.
OK, Danny, we move on from Speedball 2 to another game in which you can set about your opponents in a non-sporting manner. NHLPA hockey. We've moved from the Speedball court onto ice now, Danny, but can you still score on this?
Yeah, you can. There's a lot of certain paths that you've got to take throughout the ice rink that always ends you up in good goal-scoring positions.
OK, show us one of them, Danny. You're in the dark playing down.
Well, my favourite one is to sort of come down, round here, curve back around the defender so they get confused, and smack it down like that. And as you can see, it goes right in. Right
in the goal. We can see that on the replay there. You curve round, so that confuses the defenders completely.
That's right. If I keep moving because of the inertia on the ice, which is quite strong, they can't actually pull back and chase after me quick enough.
And you end up with a cracking one in the corner. OK, Danny, well, I've got another goal-scoring technique. It's not quite as classy as that one, but it's equally as effective. I get the ball and basically keep it on the same guy. If I can get it to an attacker, weave him down the pitch, OK, not letting the defence get a beat on me for a second. When I approach the goalie, go one way, and then when the goalie moves with me, quickly flick it the other way, and it goes into the corner. The goalie can't do anything about it at all.
I don't know. I don't think that's an extremely good goal-scoring tactic myself. I think mine works a lot more better.
Why is your one better?
I just don't think it works very often. I've tried that a few times. I don't find it very successful.
Well, perhaps you need to practice a little bit on your game-playing skill then, Daniel.
I think actually you better start learning more different tactics, Dominik, because that's quite a mediocre tactic, to be honest.
All right, Danny, any more tips then on NHLPA hockey?
Well, yeah, it's quite effective to do a lot of passing.
Right.
Say when you're going down the middle of the ice rink, for example, if you pass it about quite a lot, then you actually know you're going to pass before you pass. Whereas it takes just a couple of split seconds for your opponent to realise
that you've passed it, so you've got the advantage.
And he's also got to pull back and chase after the receiver.
Now that's another thing, that with the ice being slippery, you've got inertia, like you have in a lot of platform games, for example.
That's right, yeah.
But what difficulties does this pose?
Well, it poses a lot of difficulty for the opponent, because when he's trying to pull back, the inertia is so strong because it's on ice. It takes, well, literally, about 4 or 5 seconds to actually pull back.
Yeah.
Or the other thing you can do is try and switch to another player, which takes a lot of thinking and can often foul up.
So would you say it's worth in this game then not to charge in? If you're on defence, then just take things quite easy.
Yeah, if you're just a single defender and you see him come down, don't actually push it too much in each direction, because you'll get through the inertia and you'll speed off and you won't be able to pull back. Just try and edge it a little bit left and right, and then bam right into him, and hopefully you'll knock him on his backside.
OK, we'll leave the chilly wastes of the ice now to go into my favourite game of all time, Sensible Soccer.
Well, Dominik, you've been telling me all day how really good you are at this game, so I think I'll give you the honours this time.
I'll be happy to oblige, Danny. OK, right, first of all, I'm playing Celtic. Like Speedball 2 in a way, you do have a sort of management bit, which is the selection of your side. Each team has 3 star players, and it's very important where you put them. I tend to go for a 5-3-2 formation. Is there any similarities between this and Speedball 2? In a way, your star players are just like the ones that you would train up. Now, funnily enough, just like you in Speedball 2, I like to have this strong channel up the middle. I play a bit of a long ball Wimbledon game, unfortunately, but it's goals that count. So I've got 5 men at the back, and I've got a star defender right at the back, keeping the side together. I've got a star player right in the middle of midfield, and I've got a star player up front, and I think I'm covered in all 3 areas, and it's good for the sort of Route 1 football that I enjoy. So unfortunately, you're Arsenal, Danny, but I won't hold that against you too much. So I'm in the yellow and green playing down. Danny's in the red and white playing up the pitch. Now, basically, the key to Sensible Soccer and the key to a lot of football games is the corners of the goal, OK? It's like in real football, if you bang it right at the goalkeeper, you're not going to get anywhere. So what I always try to do is to go for the sides of the goal. So a good way to do is if you start off like halfway down the pitch, just pass it up, get near, curl it in, and the guy goes in and he scores right at the far post. As you can see on the replay, just straight Route 1 up the pitch. When you get just outside the box, the guy curls it in and your man's at the far post and the goalie can't do anything to stop it. There's other ways which you can score just by going straight to the side of the goal that aren't even as complicated as crossing it. Basically, if you can get your man in the right position, quite far out in line with one of the goalposts, and then just bang it right into a straight line. More often than not, most of the goalkeepers will fall for that. Okay, here we go. So the goalie bangs it up, pass it to him, gets in line with the post, takes a shot, and it's in there, you see? So once again, you just get in line with the post, bang the ball up, and the goalie is slightly weak in those areas.
Any other tips for this game?
Well, the advantage in sensible soccer is that you can actually pass directly to your players. If you just tap the ball, it will go automatically to them. It's a good way of getting up the pitch. Now, like the speedball too, I suppose, if you move quick enough, your opponent can't get to you. Like a lot of sports games, if you do lots of quick passing, then your opponent just won't know what you're going to do because, I mean, you're going to know you're passing before your opponent does, so you'll get that split second.
Right.
So I would take advantage of this and any other sports games where the ball does go directly to the feet. I'd take advantage of that, do a lot of passing until you're up there, and then just go for the sides of the goals, right in the corners, and you'll score every time.
Now Danny, when you're playing platform games, what's the most important thing to bear in mind?
The most important thing is, without a doubt, taking your time whenever you're exploring new parts of a platform game, like whether it be a new level or a new part of a level. See, if you're rushing along at top speed or just ridiculously fast, if an enemy comes on that you're not expecting, the chances of you surviving it are a lot less, because though obviously the quicker it comes on, it's the less time you have to react to it. Whereas if you take your time and walk slowly, then obviously you're giving yourself a bit more time.
But that sounds a little bit wimpy to me, though. Isn't that chickening out? I mean, isn't it not much more fun and much more macho to kind of like, you know, just tear through the level, especially if it is a fast game?
Well, I mean, what's more macho? Surviving or dying, basically. If you're constantly dying by running into enemies, then if your mates are watching, you're going to think you're a total wimp of a games player.
Obviously, Danny, one of the other important things about platform games is the jumping.
Well, it's not really more jumping, it's more dropping off, whether it be cliffs, down holes, that kind of thing. What you should do, if you come to a part where you've got to drop off, but you don't exactly know what you're going to drop down into, just try and hang around the edge for a bit, because sometimes you trigger off platforms that are actually going to come and pick you up. You're best off waiting for about 10 seconds. If nothing comes, then a lot of games have previews that are built into them.
So generally the advice you'd give is definitely look before you leap. Now Danny, let's move on to bad guys. There's more and more platform games coming out, they're getting more and more difficult, and they are cramming the screens full of nasties now. What's the best tips to deal with them?
Well, if you come into a situation where you've just got bad guys coming from left, right, above and below, from all directions, the best thing you can do is get out as quickly as possible. One of the most important techniques you should develop is trying not to get yourself in those situations. One point you should always do is always kill enemies. Don't ever actually dodge them.
Really?
Yeah, if you dodge them, a lot of them have logic where they'll actually follow you up.
What about inertia in games? Again, this is all connected to the speed of them, where you'll have some games where after the first couple of steps your character will speed up. What's some of the pros and cons related to that?
Well, the thing with inertia is it's useful if you want to take your time, because if I'm getting too fast I can just stop and start again. So that's one of the advantages of it. It's easy to slow down and just catch your breath again. Another thing with inertia is, though, a lot of jumps or puzzles in platform games, you cannot actually make the jump or achieve certain things without going at a top speed, like enormous jumps. Right. If I go to the edge of an enormous jump, if I just do a jump and I'm from a stationary position, then I'm hardly going to make any distance. Whereas if I get a good run up, then I can run back and I'm going a lot faster so I can make a jump. It's like, say, the loop-the-loops in Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
You can't make the loop-the-loops unless you get a good run-up first.
But like we just see there, again, the other problem with taking the run-up is you go faster. If you're not careful, if you don't know where you're going, you get clobbered by a bad guy.
Well, what you've got to do, say if it's a large jump, if you're going too fast, and you can make the jump with loads of room spare, as soon as you see the land, where you're supposed to land, come on screen, ease off the speed a little bit by pushing left, so you should land quite close to the edge, then you can start going slow again.
Right, so basically start slowing down even before you land.
That's right, yeah.
Now, Danny, a long time ago, platform games were really simple. You just went along in a straight line from A to B. Nowadays, obviously, everything has changed. They're a lot more complicated, and we now have multi-directional platform games. Now, what tips can you give people on those?
Well, the thing is with most multi-directional platform games is there is only one route to the end of the level. I'll show you on flashback what I mean. As you can see on the screen, there's 5 exits going in 3 separate directions. Only one will take me to the end of the level.
So why have they put on the other ones?
Basically just to add a bit more to the game. But you'll normally find a lot of items or bonuses in these screens as well. That's just to give you the incentive to go out of your way to collect them. It's like here, I'm going to pick up this hollow cube.
Now, is that something that you'll need in the game?
Yeah, I'll need that. Because after about 2 or 3 screens going the correct route, I come to a part where I can't progress without the hollow cube.
Do you think it's better to, identify the correct route and blast through it, or is it better to explore every single avenue?
Yeah, if you do find the correct route, you're probably best off going there for the first time. Once you learn it, then explore all the other parts and find the bonuses and stuff.
And how can you spot if it's the correct route? Is there anything that would give the game away?
It's usually a lot more difficult.
Okay, Danny, I think we've just about covered everything, but before we bid farewell to platform games, is there any other final tips you'd like to give out?
Yeah, there is actually. There's a real skill in actually knowing who your enemies are.
Is that not quite obvious sometimes?
It is most of the time, but sometimes they're rather camouflaged in the background.
Okay, let's see how that works on Cool Spot then, Danny.
As you can see, you've got a nice lovely background, you've got this lovely worm. Is it an enemy or not? Some people will be able to tell it is, a lot of people won't. The best thing you can actually do to determine whether it is or it isn't is just try shooting at it.
No matter how cute it looks?
Well, the cuter the better.
Now, Danny, when it comes to scrolling beat-em-ups like Streets of Rage 2, Final Fight or Batman Returns like we've got here, the essential difference between those and, say, head-to-head beat-em-ups is the screen perspective. Not only can you go left and right, but you can also walk into the frame and also come down out of it as well. Now, what difficulties does that pose?
One main difficulty is the fact that you've got to be on exactly the same horizontal line as the enemy to connect any punches or any sort of kicks. But that can also work to your advantage because so have they.
So is it advisable to get on the same horizontal line as him and then just walk straight up to him and start laying in?
It's okay to do that against the normal standard enemies that come all the time, but when you get to the more difficult and more varied mid-level guardians or end-of-level guardians, you're probably best off attacking them from a different line, a different horizontal line. So when you actually get on a vertical line with them, you can't actually hit each other. But then actually approach him from a vertical line, say from above or below.
Right.
That way, by the time you're on the same line as him, you're in right close and you can give him some really hard smacks.
I see, so like right at the last minute, jump right up at him so he doesn't have time to react.
That's right, yeah. And also, the other advantage to that is that in a lot of games, you have a separate range of attacks for close encounters, which means your punches can become headbutts or your kicks can become throws, grabs, pile drives.
And obviously if you walk straight up to them and try that, chances are they'll land a hit on you before you get the chance.
Yeah, that's for the major baddies, like the end-of-level ones.
Okay, Danny, getting away from all this horizontal line malarkey, Is there any one simple move that you find tends to work in all beat-em-ups, regardless of what they're like?
Yeah, there is actually. I'll just follow me and I'll show you.
Okay, here we are on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and what are you going to show us then, Danny?
What I've noticed is the vast majority of beat-em-ups, including ones without floor perspective and overhead ones as well, is that the flying kicks seem to be by far the best attack method.
So why do you think it is then that flying kicks tend to work better than anything else?
Well, if you attack them from the air, then they can't actually detect that you're actually in front of them. So they aren't ready for an attack, and by the time they actually see you, they're already on the floor, just being kicked in the face.
And I suppose as well, if you're constantly jumping about, then, you know what I mean, the quicker you're moving, the harder it's going to be for them to get near you.
That's right, yeah, because they seem to follow you about the screen, but only after, say, about a second after you've moved. It just takes a while for it to detect where you are on the screen.
What's the sort of best screen position for scrolling beat-em-ups?
Well, you see, with scrolling beat-em-ups, they seem to spend half the time scrolling, half the time static. It's like there's no scrolling here. When I finish all these enemies off, it will start to scroll to the next screen.
Right.
When it is actually scrolling, you're best trying to stay as centre as possible. Because if enemies come on, it's similar to shooting ups, you've got to be ready for them.
Right.
And again, you can get them from behind. But it seems to be about 50-50 whether they come from in front or behind, so centre's about the best.
And what about things like, say, end-of-level guardians on beat-em-ups? Is that just a case of learning the patterns?
Yeah, they vary on every different game, so you just got to try and use your own judgment. What you should do is try and look on the floor, say, for example, lines, and you try and get on the same line, and they should get on the same line, so you can use that so you make sure you can hit them.
Right, so here you've got little sort of like cracks in the pavement, so you'll be able to see, like, by going along that same line, especially like with these robots, which are very, very fast.
Yeah, and you can also use the top and the bottom of the screen here. If I come to the very bottom, then eventually they will, and I know I'm on the same line as them, so I won't miss.
Right.
Same with the top of the screen as well. They eventually come up here as well, so I can easily get them and give them a good kick in.
So, any final little tidbits on beat-em-ups?
Yeah, there is. On beat-em-ups where you can get energy power-ups, say like, most of the time it's an apple. Yeah, or say like in the Turtles, pizzas for example, yeah. You should never actually collect them until you're down to your very last few pieces of energy.
So despite the kind of mindless violence aspect to these games, there is quite a degree of thinking involved.
Yeah, there is, yeah. You've got to try and think up some good strategies.
Who'd have believed it? Finding the right joystick technique is something we all must do at some point in our teenage life. I know I found mine, but the road was long and arduous. Here Danny shows you some shortcuts as he gives his personal selection of great gaming grips.
On the Megadrive joypad, there's 4 different techniques you can use to control the buttons. There's what I like to call method 1, where you're using your left thumb to cover the directional pad, and you're using 3 fingers to cover the buttons, like so. There's another method as well where again you're using your left thumb to cover the directional pad, but you're also using your right thumb to cover the buttons, mainly hovered over B, but also keeping cover of A and C at the same time. There's another slightly different method where instead of using your thumb for the directional pad, you use these 2 fingers to roll the directional pad around. Also, you can use your thumb to cover the buttons like this. Again, like this as well, using these 2 fingers. You can also use your 3 fingers like this. Method 4 has 2 problems. Thankfully, not many people use this one, but I have seen quite a few people use it. It's not a very good idea to have your fingers on the directional pad, unfortunately. I mean, unlike using your thumb, you can quite easily cross your fingers over like this. It also takes a lot more concentration to have 2 fingers on one button, which is basically all the directional pad is. Also, having your thumb on the buttons
you can only actually cover one button at the same time. It should be B if you're going to use this method. But if you want to do a quick snap to either A or C, to either jump, shoot, use your magic bomb, anything like that, you're wasting a very valuable split second by having to jump. It's like, say, method 3, for example, which is this one. Again, you've got the problems of using your fingers for a directional pad, but at least you're curing half of the problems by using your fingers to cover the buttons. But I wouldn't actually advise to use either of these two methods because they're both flawed quite heavily. The method that the majority of players seem to use is method 2. This is where you've got your thumb on the directional pad and your other thumb covering all the buttons. I think the reason why so many people seem to use this technique is because you're only actually concentrating on your thumbs. It's quite easy to do that. That isn't actually a very good way to do it because, like I've already explained, just having your thumb covering the buttons is restricting your reaction time. I think the best way to counteract this flaw is by using your fingers on the buttons. This is what method 1 is. It's also by far the best method that I've always used since I've been playing games. This way you get the best of both worlds. You're using your thumb to roll around the joypad and you're getting to cover all 3 buttons at the same time. This might cause a few problems to learn this technique at first. Once you get used to concentrating on having 3 fingers at the same time, you become a lot better games player.
Right, Danny, we now come to the most exhausting type of games there is, button bashing games. Usually of the Olympic variety, where all kind of snooty finesse goes out the window and it's just hammer 2 buttons as hard as you possibly can. Obviously, joystick technique is of paramount importance here, Danny. What technique do you favour?
Well, the technique I favour has got to be the rubbing your thumb on the buttons. Just get your thumb and rub like mad on the buttons, A and B usually.
Do you not get a blister or something?
That's what I was going to say. If you do it without some sort of covering, whether it be a sleeve, a sock, a towel...
Lovely little silk handkerchief?
Yeah,
perhaps?
if you want to, yeah, if you're rich enough.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, just cover your thumb and blast away like there's no tomorrow.
Now, why is that better than the rest?
Well, with all the other techniques, you're constantly lifting your fingers off the buttons, which actually takes, well, a microsecond. But the amount of times you're hitting the buttons, you know, which is like hundreds, it adds up.
Yeah, hey, don't knock microseconds.
You can't knock microseconds, no. Whereas with this technique, although you're moving your hand left and right, you're not actually leaving the buttons, you're just crossing one or the other.
Right. So what are some of the other techniques then, Danny?
Well, most people seem to use a finger technique, which is just smashing A and B as fast as possible with your fingers. Which, like I said before, you're lifting, which with this technique you're not.
Yeah. Also, it tends to shove the Megadrive pad about, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It seems to move about the table like it's got a mind of its own.
Yeah.
So, unless you've got some sort of locks around it, you're not really shouldn't be using that technique, no.
I'll show you what I use, Danny, actually. This is a very, very bizarre one. This is called the 2-thumb technique, basically because you use 2 thumbs rather than like 3 or 4. And what it means is you put your 2 thumbs over the A and B button and you grip the Megadrive joypad firmly, but gently still, right? And just move the joypad as quick as you can so that the buttons actually hit against the thumbs. Now, it's quite good because, I like this because you can actually use your arms and generate quite a bit of power in it. And I think that my technique might have enough to beat you on the 100 metres in Olympic gold. So we'll just see it. In fact, I'll tell you what, Danny, I'll even go first. Okay, so here we go. It's Dominik with the 2 thumbs technique. Pioneered in Japan in the early 1920s. And here we go. And he's making his way through the field. But it's starting to slip out my hands. Danny, it's starting to slip out my hands. Story of my life. Hang on. Okay, through 10.36, Danny. How's that then?
That was quite poor actually, Dominic.
Okay, well I'll pass it on to you for your incredible technique. Is the plank of wood absolutely necessary, Danny?
Yeah, so's my mum's apron as well.
So this technique involves a mother's apron and a plank of wood?
Yeah. You need them 2 accessories or you just got no chance.
Alright then. Just as well as the kind of thing everybody carries about with them in the wallet.
Obviously, yeah.
So off goes Danny, 10.36 to beat here. And he's tearing through them, he certainly is. We're halfway through here, he's only been going for 4 seconds. He's streaking ahead of the rest of the pack. This could be a monumental time here for Danny. He comes up to the finishing line. He goes through 10.10. So Danny beats it me by 26 hundredths of a second. Slightly better technique than Danny.
Just slightly better, yeah.
Now, Danny, earlier on you said about platform games that you want to take things nice and easy, take it nice and steady. Now, shoot-'em-ups are a different kettle of fish altogether. You've got all manner of mayhem spraying at you from every single direction. Your obvious concern has got to be, how do you keep your spacecraft safe? So where's the safest area for it?
By far the best position you can actually keep your actual spacecraft is approximately a third from the back of the screen, which obviously means you've got 2/3 of a screen in front of you. About there, that's about the best place.
Now, why is that so good there, Danny?
Well, as you probably already know, the vast majority of the enemies always come from the front. That's where you get the massive onslaught. Right. That's why you need more space in front of you than you do behind. But you get a lot of people who hang around doing this all the time.
Right down at the bottom.
Right down at the back. That gives you a lot more room to react to enemies coming from the front. But what about all those surprise enemies that come from behind, which always seem to come when you're not expecting them?
They certainly do, Danny, and there's a fair few of them as well.
There's quite a few, and what kind of time have I got to react when I'm positioned there to an enemy that come up from behind?
I would say something like no time at all.
Exactly, no time at all. So the best place is around there.
Now, is there any times where you would move at all from there? I mean, say if there was a power-up right at the top of the screen, would you say that it's worth, you know, risking it a little bit to go up to the top of the screen to get the power-up?
You can relate that to the last technique I was just mentioning. Because if you're busy killing all these enemies that come in front of you, you may not have time to go to get the power-up until you've actually finished the enemies off. So having some space behind you, it actually gives you room to back up a little bit, curve up and get the power up.
Now, in a game like Xenon 2 and like lots of other shoot-'em-ups, you get attacks in waves. You'll get groups of, you know, like 5 or more enemies coming towards you. Now, is it best to make sure you clear them all up?
Well, definitely. You should always kill as many as you can. If you can't kill all of them, kill as many as you possibly can. Because it's usually not too long before the next wave come on. And if you've got 2 waves of enemies on screen, then you're going to have a lot of trouble trying to clear them all off.
Right, give us an example when you really want to be moving your craft constantly then.
Well, I'll give you the perfect example on a Project X.
Right, one of the most difficult shoot-'em-ups out.
Yeah, if I stay still, look how close the bullets come to me. Well, if I keep moving about, dangerously close, very close. Keep moving about, they can't touch me.
Right.
Simply because from the point where the bullet leaves the enemy, it's just going to go in a straight line to where my ship was. And if I kill
it's not there anymore.
If it's not there anymore, if I keep moving, it just can't possibly hit me. Whereas if I stay still, bam.
Exactly. As soon as you stay still,
as soon as you stay still,
you cop it. Now, this constant movement also applies to things like homing missiles, doesn't it?
It's quite tricky with homing missiles, because even if you keep moving, it's going to follow you. But the best way to dodge a homing missile is by going to although it's quite dangerous, to the edge of the screen, preferably the back. Wait till it comes close to you, and dodge very quickly out of the way when it's just really close to hitting you. That way it should go off the screen. It won't have enough space to curve round and follow you.
But you said you should never get to the edge of the screen.
Well, and you just got to at certain points.
Right.
I mean, there's not many homing missiles in the game, so the chances of you being followed by a homing missile and an enemy coming up from behind are ridiculously slim.
OK, the last of the missile-type orientated questions. Smart bombs are something which are terribly, terribly badly used by most players, aren't they?
Yeah, you get a lot of really sloppy, lazy people who just use a smart bomb just because you can't be bothered killing enemies on screen. Just really a cop-out.
I'll tell you something, there's nothing that makes me so mad as sloppy smart bombs.
I'll tell you something ridiculous. You should always save them until the point where you're going to die if you don't use them. That could be if a bullet's just about to hit you, or an enemy's got your corner and you can't get out of the way. They're the only times you should use them.
Some shoot-'em-ups have what are called enemy generators, which are basically machines which spew out enemy after enemy until they're destroyed. Right, I'm in big trouble here. I'm the warrior in the red, OK? There's a monster generator, that's the skull and crossbones. Now they're pouring out. I'm trying to, like, bash them a bit as quick as I can, but it's not actually getting me anywhere because they're still pouring out. What am I doing wrong?
Well, the first thing you should do is take out the generators, which is the skeletons and the tables. They're the absolute priority. If you don't take them out, they're just going to keep on pouring out infinitely, all these enemies.
But surely, but when you try to take them out, you're going to take a couple of hits from the skeletons.
You just got to, like, sacrifice that little bit of energy, because if you don't, you're going to lose so much more. You just got to take out the generators as soon as possible, no matter how much energy you sacrifice. And if you do it right, you shouldn't lose all that much energy anyway.
Now finally, Danny, on a lot of shoot-'em-ups where you have unlimited firepower, you'll quite often find hidden power-ups. Is this true?
That is true, yeah. The best place to find them is usually in places you'd never actually need to shoot. You're not going to get hidden bonuses in
say, the line of fire between you and an enemy. You're going to get them in mid-air, like this one, for example. That's the best way to uncover them.
So just basically spray that gunfire about all over the place and it will be raging power-ups ahoy.
That's right, yeah.
Well, tragically, we've come to the end of Power Play, but I'm sure you'll agree it's been a monumental 45 minutes in a real televisual stroke games playing sense. We hope your games playing skills have improved, but more than that, we hope you've improved as a human being. Now, at the start of the video, we promised we'd set you a challenge to test out your newfound skills, so it's over to the great man himself, Danny Curley, to tell you exactly what it is. Danny.
The challenge game is going to be Bubsy Bobcat, and what I'm going to set on the game is you've got to complete the first level as fast as you possibly can.
Here I come, baby.
Well, you saw it with your own eyes. If you think you can get anywhere near Danny's unfeasibly fast time, then write to this address, giving your name, address and telephone number along with your very best time for level 1 of Bubsy. If you measure up, then you will be contacted with full details of the Curley Challenge, to be held around the country in 1994. And there'll be up to £1,000 worth of prizes to the winner.